The stadium lights burned like artificial suns above a sea of white. 70,000 voices thundered beneath them, vibrating through the concrete bones of the Santiago Bernabeu. Flags waved, scarves spun through the air. The roar of anticipation pulsed like a living heartbeat. And at the center of it all, a single name echoed across Madrid. Mbappé. For years, the football world had whispered about this moment. For years, headlines, rumors, negotiations, and broken expectations had built a myth around one possibility. Kylian Mbappé, Real Madrid, two forces destined to collide. Tonight, the waiting was over. But to understand why this moment felt so monumental, why millions of fans across the planet were glued to their screens and leaning forward in anticipation, you had to go back through the years, through the rumors, the near misses, the pressure, and the impossible expectations that followed one of the most electrifying players the game had ever seen. Because Mbappé's arrival at Real Madrid was never just a transfer. It was a story, a saga, a footballing prophecy that the entire sport had been watching unfold in slow motion. And now, finally, the curtain was rising. Long before the white jersey ever touched his shoulders, Kylian Mbappé had already become a global phenomenon. Speed that looked almost supernatural, explosiveness that shattered defensive lines in seconds, a calmness in front of goal that belied his age. The world first truly felt his presence during the unforgettable nights in Monaco. Defenders chased shadows while Mbappé sprinted into open space, leaving chaos in his wake. Champions League giants crumbled as the teenage forward danced through their backlines. But it was the World Cup in 2018 that transformed him from prodigy into legend. Russia watched in disbelief as a 19-year-old forward tore through defenses with fearless confidence. The sprint against Argentina that left defenders scrambling, the clinical finishes, the unstoppable runs. By the time France lifted the trophy, the football world had a new superstar. And quietly, almost inevitably, the whispers began. Real Madrid. Because Real Madrid had always been the final destination for the game's greatest talents, the club where legends were forged under the brightest lights. Cristiano Ronaldo had carried the torch through an era of dominance, but every dynasty eventually searches for its next king, and many believed Mbappé was destined to become exactly that. For years, the possibility lingered like a distant star on the horizon. Every transfer window reignited the conversation. Every statement from Mbappé was dissected. Every report from journalists fueled endless debate. Would he go? When would he go? And what would happen when he finally stepped onto the pitch wearing the iconic white jersey? Because Real Madrid was not just another club. It was pressure incarnate. At Madrid, greatness was not admired. It was demanded. Every touch scrutinized. Every mistake magnified. Every moment measured against decades of historic triumph. Players didn't simply arrive at Real Madrid. They faced judgment. And the expectations surrounding Mbappé were unlike anything the modern football world had seen. Some fans imagined him as the natural heir to Ronaldo. Others feared the burden might be too heavy. After all, many incredible players had arrived at Madrid only to discover that the weight of the crest could crush even the brightest stars. But Mbappé was different, or at least, that's what everyone hoped. As the seasons passed, Real Madrid began quietly shaping a new era. Young stars arrived. Vinicius Jr., once criticized and doubted, evolved into a devastating winger whose dribbling terrified defenders. Rodrigo brought flair and composure, delivering clutch performances on Europe's biggest stages. Jude Bellingham emerged as a midfield powerhouse, combining intelligence, strength, and goal-scoring instinct. Eduardo Camavinga and Aurelien Tchouameni added energy and control in midfield. This wasn't just a team, it was a foundation, a structure waiting for the final piece. And every conversation inevitably returned to the same question. What would happen if Mbappé joined this squad? The idea alone was enough to send fans into daydreams. Imagine Vinicius slicing through the left wing, Mbappe exploding through the center, Rodrigo weaving into dangerous spaces, Bellingham charging forward from midfield. The possibilities felt limitless. But football history had taught fans one crucial lesson. Dream teams on paper did not always translate into greatness on the pitch. Chemistry mattered, balance mattered, and the pressure of global expectations could shatter even the most promising combinations. Which is why the moment Mbappe finally stepped onto the Bernabeu pitch for his debut carried so much tension. The cameras followed his every move as he walked down the tunnel, boots tapping softly against the concrete floor. He paused for a moment before stepping into the light, not out of hesitation, but awareness, because he understood something most players didn't. This wasn't just a match, this was history unfolding. When Mbappe stepped onto that grass, he wasn't just starting a game, he was beginning a new chapter in football's most powerful storybook. The stadium erupted, a roar so loud it seemed to shake the foundations of the city itself. Mbappe glanced around the arena, the white flags, the banners, the fans screaming his name. He took a deep breath. For a brief second, the noise faded into the background, and in that moment, he remembered something simple. A kid with a ball, a dream. That was where everything had started. The whistle blew, the match began. Real Madrid immediately took control of possession, the team moving with fluid confidence. Short passes flowed across the midfield. Camavinga drifted wide to support Vinicius. Bellingham surged forward, linking play between attack and midfield. The rhythm felt smooth, calculated, but the real question hovered in the air. How would Mbappe fit into this machine? Within minutes, the answer began to emerge. Mbappe didn't simply wait for the ball, he hunted space. He drifted between defenders, constantly shifting positions, forcing the opposition's defensive line to stretch and adjust. A quick 1-2 with Bellingham opened the first glimpse of danger. Mbappe accelerated. Two defenders scrambled to close him down, but he was already gone. The crowd gasped as he burst into open space, his pace turning the field into a blur. He fired a shot toward the far corner. The goalkeeper barely managed to tip it wide. The stadium erupted in applause. It wasn't a goal, but it was a warning. Mbappe had arrived. As the match continued, his influence grew. Vinicius darted down the left flank, drawing defenders toward him. Suddenly, he slipped a precise pass into the center. Mbappe was already there. The control was effortless. One touch, turn, acceleration. A defender lunged desperately. Too late. Mbappe slipped past him with a fluid movement that felt almost unfair. The crowd rose to their feet. The goalkeeper rushed forward. Mbappe lifted his head, and instead of shooting, he squared the ball perfectly. Rodrigo tapped it into the empty net. Goal! The Bernabeu exploded. Teammates swarmed Mbappe as the stadium roared. It wasn't even his goal, but his impact was undeniable. He wasn't just scoring, he was transforming the attack. Yet the most unforgettable moment of the night was still waiting. The match tightened as the opposing team fought back, equalizing late in the second half. Tension spread through the stadium. Time ticked away. The score remained level. Then came the 88th minute. A loose ball rolled toward midfield. Bellingham intercepted it and quickly turned. He saw Mbappe already sprinting forward. A perfectly weighted through pass split the defense. Mbappe accelerated. One defender chased desperately behind him. Another rushed across from the side, but Mbappe's speed was something else entirely. He surged between them like lightning breaking through clouds. The goalkeeper rushed out. The stadium held its breath. Mbappe slowed for just a fraction of a second. Then, with incredible calmness, he chipped the ball delicately over the keeper. Time seemed to freeze. The ball floated through the air and dropped gently into the net. Goal!